Hello and welcome to another Giant Slayer TFT Top 5 Countdown video. Today our analyst will be listing the top 5 compositions for the final patch of Set 3, 1018. As the balance patches have been smaller, there hasn't really been a huge shift in the meta, so a lot of the compositions that worked in previous metas are still doing well currently. On top of that, the meta is still quite diverse with a wide range of builds being viable. With all that said, let's jump on in. But before we get back to the video, don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social media pages. As we've talked about in recent videos, we are nearing 10,000 subscribers, and we're happy to announce that once we reach that milestone, we'll be doing a giveaway. Check the description below the video for details. Alright, let's get back to the video. To kick our top 5 list off, we have Shredder coming in as the number 5 composition. Shredder or Xayah carry is the Blade Master composition of 1018. Unfortunately, Slash Bros, which use Master Yi as the carry, has fallen out of the meta and struggles to do well when played. But never fear if you're a fan of Blade Masters, as Xayah carry can do work in the current meta. At the moment, the build can be played in 2 different ways. First is the standard Shredder style, which uses Jarvan, Xayah, and Caitlyn as your 3-star champions, while you can round out the rest of your composition with Shen, another Blade Master, a second Protector, and Celestials. It's a more balanced composition, but may struggle in doing enough damage. The second and more commonly used currently in the meta is the 6 Blade Master with Xayah. You can still use Jarvan, as his attack speed buff is insanely good with Xayah, but otherwise you fill in the rest of the composition with Blade Masters. Both variations focus on Xayah attack damage items such as Infinity Edge, Giant Slayer, and Last Whisper. Overall, Blade Master builds, whether it's Xayah or Master Yi, are quite volatile. They can go first as easily as they can bottom 4, and they rely heavily on 3-starring your carry and a few other champions to do well. Make sure you scout before committing to builds like this, as contesting the units is a surefire way to place lower than normal. Up next is a composition that did well in the Galaxies Championship. That, of course, is ASTRO Sniper, which is coming in at number 4 on today's list. ASTRO Sniper has consistently done well throughout the second half of Set 3 after the mid-set update. Alongside builds like Cybernetics, it's been a core composition you can lean on every single patch, and in 1018, it's still doing well. As mentioned, we saw this build used to great effect in the Galaxies Championship, as it either placed highly or won a few games over the course of the tournament. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows for ASTRO Sniper. The main issue surrounding the build is due to how insanely expensive it is to play. This is because the core champions are almost all 4-cost units. Jhin, Teemo, Gnar, and Wukong are all essential for this build, and the only inexpensive core champion for ASTRO Sniper is Nautilus. Sure, the supporting units after that are easier to find, but for this build to do well, you want to at least 2-star your frontline and 1 backline carry. That said, when this build does get online, it wrecks other compositions. Between the heavy amount of CC from Teemo, Gnar, Nautilus, and Wukong, and the sheer amount of damage output from Jhin and Teemo, you can have an insanely cohesive build. While we do recommend this build, it's another that you may struggle to play consistently every game if anyone else is contesting it due to the amount of 4-cost champions it requires. So be sure to scout before committing to it. Moving along to our next composition, we have Rebels coming in at number 3. Rebels are still a top composition in 1018, but there's 2 forms of them that you can play. The first is the standard 6 Rebels that uses Jinx as the carry and leans on Gangplank late game to do well. Most games this is the variation that you'll see, and it played very well in the Galaxies Championship. The second variation is much less common, but still uses Jinx as the carry, with Gangplank being an important unit, especially since it uses 4 Space Pirates. 4 Space Pirates can do well, but it is extremely difficult to pull off consistently. It's the type of build that you can go when you're high rolling and get blessed by an early roll of Gangplank. But we did see it used effectively in the Galaxies Championship. In terms of which builds we recommend for ranked, we lean towards 6 Rebels. It's more consistent and less reliant on getting super lucky. It has an amazing early game with Ziggs, Malphite, Rumble, and a 3rd Rebel, and transitions smoothly into the late game with Jinx as the carry. Rumble does well as a replacement for Gangplank until you find him at level 8 or 9. 6 Rebels are also harder to kill due to the shielding that they provide. So if you're looking for a strong late game build, Rebels is the way to go. If you want something more fun than 6 Rebels and can pull it off well, try the 3 Rebels variation that uses 4 Space Pirates. Next up, we have Cybernetics as the number 2 comp for today's list. Cybernetics. Cybernetics are just so darn reliable and consistent. This is especially true for 1018, as so many of the galaxies are great for cybernetics. The newest galaxy, Big Bang, feels like it was almost designed around cybernetics, as you get more items and gold, a free force of nature, and you can roll the units easier with a free reroll. Galactic Armory provides additional components, which means more items for your cybernetic champions, and Manatee's Delight can basically guarantee that you get an Infiltrator Aurelia. Practically every galaxy is useful for cybernetics in 1018, which bumps up their priority quite a bit. We saw this reflected in the Galaxies Championship, with cybernetics being contested by multiple players almost every single game. Interestingly, there are actually two variations of cybernetics that we see used currently. First is your standard 6 cybernetics with extra champions tacked on at level 8. The second variation leans into 6 chrono and instead uses just 3 cybernetics. Both were played in the Galaxies Championship, and both builds can do well. It really comes down to what the game gives you and what you scout. All in all, cybernetics are still the most consistent build of the whole set. They've done well since the beginning of Set 3 and now all the way to the end of it. So for this last week or so of Set 3, if you haven't tried playing cybernetics, we highly recommend that you give them a go. And the composition coming in at number 1 today is Star Guardian Sorcerer. Surely this is of no surprise to anyone, as Star Guardian Sorcerer is just straight up dominating the meta right now. It's not a guaranteed win, but it does place in the top 4 more often than most other builds. And in the Galaxies Championship, we saw this composition win multiple times and consistently be among the top 4 builds every single game. So why does this do so well? A big reason is that Nico makes for a powerful frontline. She's hard to deal with by most comps, especially once you fully deck her out in defensive items. Being difficult to kill, plus the fact that she has an AoE stun, means that she buys a lot of time for her backline. Janna then swoops in with her ultimate to stall the fight even more, stunning the whole board. On top of all of that, you have Soraka dishing out healing to all of your champions. All of this culminates into one thing, and that's time. Time is what this composition values the most, as the longer the fight goes on, the more likely you are to win the round. Why is that? Syndra, of course. Syndra, whether she has mana items or not, is going to ramp up during a fight. She always starts off slow because she needs to build up orbs to use, but midway through a fight, she's going to basically one-shot any champion. So if you can keep her alive and buy time, the chances of winning a round go up drastically the longer the fight goes on. Basically what it comes down to is that Star Guardian Sorcerer is really a cohesive composition that plays out like a well-oiled machine. Every champion serves a purpose and helps win the fight. It also helps that builds like Darkstar and Mech have fallen a bit out of favor. Those builds can do well against Star Guardian Sorcerer, as they have a means of disrupting the backline with enough damage to kill Nico. Definitely be sure to play a few games of Star Guardian Sorcerer before Set 3 ends, as it's been a staple build of Set 3. Alright folks, that is it for our top 5 compositions of patch 1018. But you know we're not done yet, as we have just a couple more builds to talk about in our honorable mentions. These builds can do well, but they just aren't quite consistent enough. Up first for our honorable mentions, we have Mech. Mech took a big dive in the meta between 1017 and 1018. It's still played and common to see, but it's nowhere near as popular or as strong as it was previously. Whether this is due to the meta shifting or the hotfix in 1017 being a bit too harsh for the mech, it's really kind of hard to say. What is easy to say is that this build just isn't as consistent anymore. With all that said, it can still do well. Victor as the backline carry or Shaco as the melee carry can do well against enemy backlines. The mech itself is still difficult to kill, especially with dodge items like Shroud or Quicksilver. And to top it all off, there's late game Gangplank. Gangplank really makes and breaks this composition because the demolitionist he provides is essential for the super mech to do well in the late game, but he's also really highly contested by other builds. If you're unable to find a 2-star Gangplank, it reduces your chances of placing highly by a large amount. With all that said, the bottom line is that yes, mech can do well. Heck, it can even win games still, but it's less consistent than it once was and a bit too reliant on hitting Gangplank 2 for its late game. Our next honorable mention is Darkstars. Darkstars, whether 4 or 6, was doing well going into 1018. It was poised to be a top composition, and while it still does well, it's not doing as well as players thought it would. Like Mech, Darkstar just hasn't been consistent. This has once again been reflected in the Galaxies Championship, as both Mech and Darkstars had their moments where they shined, but overall weren't played very often. Both of them did well here or there, but nowhere near the level of other builds. For Darkstar, this is due to other builds just being overall stronger. Jin as a carry can do well, but he really shines in ASTRO Sniper due to the amount of CC in that build. Shaco is amazing, but can struggle into CC and needs to be 3-starred to properly carry late game. Xerath has potential as a late game carry, but getting to that point of the game where you can find him and 2-star him can be difficult. And really, that's the crux of the issue when it comes to Darkstars, reliably hitting the late game to obtain the necessary win conditions of the build. Jarvan is no longer ridiculously overpowered, and while Mordekaiser is a great frontline champion, he doesn't have any CC. So without great crowd control and a frontline that isn't really the strongest, it can make for difficult games for Darkstar. That said, it's still capable of winning or placing highly. And we said there's 3 carries between Jin, Shaco, and Xerath, so you do actually have a ton of flexibility in the comp. That means that you can play what the game gives you and rely more on being flexible and playing your strongest board than trying to force anything specifically. The flexibility is both a blessing and a curse, as players need to be well versed in playing Darkstars to do well. Overall, Darkstars is still a strong composition. Learning to play them can be great for climbing and ranked, but you may find yourself struggling at times due to their inconsistencies. That is going to be it for today's video, and this video marks our last top 5 comps for Set 3. We'll be back with a few more Set 3 videos, but we're gearing up for the swap over to Set 4. We are so thankful to everyone for your support during Set 3, and as mentioned, we're going to be doing a giveaway to celebrate the upcoming 10,000 subscriber milestone. Be sure to check the description and GiantSlayerTV's Twitter for more information. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.